fun.
Cool.
All righty. Well, what I might do is I might actually just kick straight in, because we've got a fair bit to cover this morning, and it should be a good fun session for us. If you hear a ping, that'll be somebody else jumping into the session. So let's kick on. So what I'd like to do is just start off with a bit of a welcome and get a bit of an update from each of you in terms of where things are at. I'm going to have a couple of quick questions that I'll get you to pop into the chat if you can. Darren, hopefully you look like you're hunting in from your iPhone, so hopefully you're able to participate via that. Really, the key topic that we're talking about today is how we actually get more done with less, and really then looking at how we make our number one opportunity for the coming year a reality. I've just put up yesterday, Pauline, who's my marketing coordinator, on the chat. Give us a wave, Pauline. Thank you. We pulled together an article which we just published yesterday talking about why lots of people don't bother with New Year's resolutions and what they do instead. So if you want to have a quick read, that's sitting up on the blog there for you. Then we'll get into key actions from the day, from the session, and a summary, and I aim to try and get all done and dusted by 12. So we'll got a fair bit to cover. I've had plenty of coffee, so we should be on and getting through all of this pretty quickly. So there's been, as Pauline to be aware, there's been a bunch of changes available on Mindshop. If you haven't had a look at the Mindshop online platform, let me just go back to that slide. We've got a bunch of new features. There's a starter tier, which doesn't actually cost anything to access. So Sharka and Mark, if you're interested in having a look at that, I'm happy to make that available to you. It's good for goal tracking. And we've got 10 online tools that you can take a look at, and a problem solving course. Really great foundation basic stuff that is, I find, just practical and tools that I use every day in solving problems with clients. So if you're interested in having a look at that, please do message me and CC Pauline, marketing@emergination.com.au, and we'll get you set up on there so you can have a look and access some of those really good tools. Yeah, really good video that was put out just recently about rebuilding Australia by one of Australia's leading commentators and economists. And what I think it's talking about is how we've had a lot of change that's happened over the last 5 or 10 years, but particularly in the last 18 months. And what that then means in terms of how the economy is firing up and so on. Again, if you're interested in the link to that, let me know. But there's a quick 5-minute video on that we can get a hold of for you and share with you. I think you'll find that really interesting stuff in terms of a general commentary on economy. Actually, here it is. Let me can I just check? Can you actually hear the audio on that? I'd say not. Give me a second and I'll try and set it up so that you can. Just give me a moment. Go. Let's try that again. So, yeah, good. So it's a great video. That Bernard Salt is a very entertaining presenter. I had the pleasure of seeing him speak at Joondalup Business Breakfast recently, and I really enjoy the insights that he has. That's just such the quickest snapshot in terms of some of the key trends to be across. But I think, understanding what's happening in the economy is always a critical thing for us as we're looking forward into the new year. So if in terms of worksheet for today, these are some of the areas that we want to be thinking about in terms of navigating the road forward. What we're going to do differently around implementation, growth, capacity, people, and your number one opportunity. Really, this particular session this morning is talking very much about how you get more in terms of capacity through agile approaches. But it's always a good idea to think about what is the single biggest thing that you want to get nailed over the next 12 months to make sure that you've got the right focus for the year ahead. So 2022. These are the key things that we keep talking to people about in terms of the key things that need to be focused on for the year ahead. Implementation is about how we take the initiatives that we have and make sure that the rubber hits the road and we get the results that we want. It's no good having great ideas if we can't implement them. Growth is a factor for everybody really in terms of the coming year. What's the right level of growth? For some people, they've got the foot down and trying to grow as fast as they possibly can. Others, what's important to them is trying to do more with less, maintain where they are with less effort and intensity. For some, they actually want to step back a bit and want to do less and achieve less, actually take the foot off the loud pedal a little bit in terms of that regard. Capacity is a key question for many business owners, and they're looking at how they expand and how they do more and what's the right way to fulfill on that. And then people is a key issue. So what I'd like to do, if that's okay with you, Mark and Shaka, given that we've got a small, intimate group, we might as well take the mics off and we can just start chatting around some of these sorts of areas around what's important for you into 2022. Mark, you've been fast on the unmute button, so I'm going to let you go first.
Well, obviously, yeah, I've kind of found that in the last couple of months, there's been a bit of a stagnation. So
that's interesting. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I kind of don't know. The middle of the year was good, and then the last couple of months has just been, pretty stagnant with bits and pieces. And I think part of the problem is that when you, as a solopreneur, you get busy doing things when you're busy.
Yep.
So you kind of neglect that sales process or the building of that pipeline, filling the funnel. And I think that's probably what's happened. So what I've identified and looked forward to is that I need to have a better plan with regards to that into 2022.
Yeah, look, I find that I'm just making some notes as we're chatting. You're absolutely right. I think that's. I was talking about this to a client just exactly just this week. She's secured a couple of really good contracts, which is going to keep her busy for the next little bit. But as soon as the contract's done, what is she doing next? So I've said, look, you've just got to make that daily habit of putting BD as part of everything that you do. I think, Mark, the other thing that I've noticed in the marketplace at the moment is that people are extraordinarily busy. And when they're extraordinarily busy, they've got their head down, bum up. And if they're looking around something that takes a little bit of thinking, like brand, sometimes that gets put on the back burner a bit because they just don't have really the time or the breathing space to be able to handle it. So any way that you can make that easier, or at least appear easier for on them, will help, I think, in terms of that sales process. I've found that a few of the clients that I'm working with, I've had one who we've got fortnightly 2-hour scheduled catch-ups, and they cancelled one 4 weeks ago, and they were planning to cancel this one this week. I said to them, no, we have to meet, even if it's for half an hour. And the reason why that's important, I find, is that, particularly when you're really, really busy, that's actually when you need advice and help more than ever. So that, how do you just start to very timely in a quick way go, how do I, if I normally would sit down with somebody for an hour for a coffee, how can I do that in 20 minutes and still deliver the same, fantastic experience for them in that? So that getting a bit more, that might be hopefully a few useful thoughts for you there, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one of the things that we've learned in the last few years is that you can do that. You don't have to meet people face to face, as nice as it is, and probably as beneficial initially for that first meeting as it is, but you don't necessarily have to do that anymore. It's not expected. So that you can save yourself, an hour, in travel time, just each way kind of thing, depending on where the person is. So that's definitely one of those things.
I think that's really good in the pre-qualification stage too. So I found that opportunity where you're trying to work out if somebody's serious and they're trying to test drive you and get a feel if you're a good fit. If they're able to do that over a quick Zoom and go, I like the sound of what you're talking about. The numbers sound right. Let's get together. And so then that meeting then moves things, forward for you, which is works really well. That's terrific. All right, I might turn to Shaka now. I have plenty of opportunity to come back to you and have plenty more questions with you, Mark. So I might ask Shaka to give me your thoughts on it.
Well, I've only just started my social enterprise, so I've been very mindful of not getting too busy as a sole entrepreneur, because the more clients I have, the more I have to drive around, and then I have no time to figure out how to make my business viable. So I've been quite mindful of that. And but having said that, I'm really known for having too many projects on the go. And that's what I've been doing. I've kind of been trialing everything and pivoting into wherever it goes. And then I think the next year will be more about focusing on what is the main thing I really want to do, and then finding the ways to actually make money as well. So
yeah, for sure. What I like about that phase that you're in, Shaka, is that it's that interesting learning phase. So that, everything you're trying to do is all about speed of learning right now. So taking on lots of different clients in lots of different ways is good, because then you get a bit of a sense of what works and what doesn't, where there's value, how they perceive that, where you think you can share in the revenue of that kind of thing, I think is really useful. And the more people you talk to, the faster you accelerate that learning process. And by treating it as a learning process, it makes it a bit more fun.
Oh yeah, that's how I look at it. Like, it's all fun and it's all a journey. So I'm just on a journey trying to learn as I go, and a lot of things we do that haven't been done before. So that really makes it hard to predict or kind of assume anything. So that's really a trial and error and going somewhere else and moving fast enough to not just get burned on something that's not working.
And then being able to call it. I do find somebody else is just trying to jump in. Greg. Okay, so I do find sometimes with this that sometimes you're not quite sure often what you're thinking. So journaling I find really good. So it gives you that reflection time, which is really useful to add into the mix. So
I'm a yoga teacher, so I do a lot of intention setting and meditation. So
fantastic.
That helps certainly.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, where do you do yoga out of interest?
Oh, I teach at gyms. I just did a series for Sterling in libraries.
Right, that's interesting.
My last one today. Generally, I just teach in Malaga.
Very good. There you go. I was up in Malaga first thing yesterday morning, as it turns out. Now, Greg Bolsh has just joined us. And because you're late, Greg, I'm going to throw you right in the deep end.
Why am I not surprised?
And what we're talking about is key challenges for 2022. We've picked 4 areas we're going to talk about in terms of implementation, growth, people, and capacity. This session today is talking a lot about capacity and how to do more with less. So I'm just interested in what you see as your key challenge for 2022.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just jumping off the diving board now and contemplating before I hit the water.
Yeah.
From where we sit, our challenge for 2022 is going to be resourcing activities outside WA. I think for the Western Australian economy, our challenge is going to be, one, the insecurity of the business community once we open the borders.
Yep.
Because we are not ready. It's going to involve masks. It's going to involve certain restrictions on workplaces, etc. I think that as far as the accessing the people and engaging the people that you need to grow, it's not, a lot of it in Perth is about face-to-face and who you know and relationships, etc. It's going to be about effectively using the technology for communication and for actually for effective communication.
Yeah,
getting people to know who you are and what you're looking for and what specifically you are looking for in the people you're trying to attract.
Yeah, so part of that is, sounds to me, Greg, if I've got it, is around how do you make sure you've got the right people attraction. So what does that mean in terms of employer brand? And culture and all of those sorts of things that sit inside the business. The second part is almost like a sales engagement piece, you know, stakeholder engagement piece. So as I see it in terms of what you're talking about there, seems to be on the money.
Yeah, I think that our market as far as attracting employees has changed a lot in the last 5 years, especially in the last couple of years. So it's not just about money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm also seeing lots of people struggling to attract and hold staff. So there seems to be a strange attitude with people joining a job and then leaving really quickly, which I think is interesting. Look, thanks for that. I'm going to press on because we've got a small group. It's pretty easy to just jump in as when makes sense. But I'm trying to get through everything that we want to do in going forward. So that's been good. This webinar is part of our Growth Hub series. What we do is we meet once a quarter for half a day at the Stirling Business Centre. This is a quick pick from our last session. The beauty of these hubs is that they run for a half day. They cover this snippet of content that I'm going to share with you today and a lot more. It is that quarterly half day that enables you to really think about your business and your strategy and make sure that strategy's top of mind, and you're sharing with like-minded business owners around problem solving and so on. Builds great community, and if that's something you're interested in, then please do talk to us about that and how you can join the Growth Hub going forward. So a few of the things that we talked about in the October Growth Hub were importance of unlearning, Spark model, and a few other bits and pieces there that we can talk about another time. So let's talk about implementation, because this is the key challenge that I think that many businesses are struggling with. We talked about people and finding people, but at the end of the day, we still need to implement. And the aim is, how do we think about doing less and achieving more? Really, that's the key point that we're looking to embrace in 2022. So I think that this quote by Patrick Lencioni is really important. If everything is important, then nothing is. And I mean, you put your hand up if you've heard somebody in the last week say, "I'm really busy." Put your hand up if you've said it. So, you know, we're all guilty of using that phrase, busy. Sometimes I find people, including myself, saying, "I'm busy. I'm good busy, but I'm busy." And so the distinction there is, in terms of that busyness, is are you being productive? I think the challenge, of course, is in how do you work out what's really important in all of that mix. And to that regard, really what we've got to think about is our friend, the Pareto principle, the good old 80-20 rule, and think about what are the things that we're working on that are taking up our time and where is the value coming from. And I just find that this is just one of those simple truisms that we all know, but rarely apply as much as we could. Looking at where we're expending our time and where the critical value is. Where are the opportunities for improving that substantially? So who keeps a track of their time? Just, you know, raise your hand. Yeah, okay. So we all do. So and just feel free to jump off mute and tell me what you're doing. I use Pauline and I use Toggle. So what do you guys? Greg, what do you use?
I use Outlook.
Righto. Mark, what do you do?
I pretty much use a timesheet kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
good old hand drawn, well, not hand drawn, you know,
Yeah,
pen and paper kind of thing.
And look, I love the tactile nature of that. I've got one of my tools that I use religiously daily, and I'll just try and sort of shove that up without the image. The time log we'll share we'll send a video, an email out with the video and a tool around that. Sorry, bear with me there. That gives you some more information on that. But I find that's a really useful time management tool. Shaka, what do you do to track your time?
Oh, I just block my time in the calendar.
Yep.
And then just follow the task. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I found that having a real focus on what you do, where you're spending your time, is really critical to get more out of it. And reflecting on what you've got done in a day on a regular basis takes a few minutes, but it allows you to continually find those little 1% improvement opportunities that after 70 days is 100% improvement. So, you know, it's one of those key things. So I think that in 2022, leaders and business owners need to be more agile, you know, regardless of their size. And I'm not sure if you know, if you've read any of these books. The Lean Startup's been around a long time in terms of thinking about new ideas and how you take them to market. So Shaka, if you haven't come across that, I'd recommend that as a really good read. You might have already done that. This book, Scrum, from Jeff Sutherland, is actually really good in terms of, you know, it's a great read in terms of looking for where you find those 1% incremental improvement opportunities, but also really, I find that the thinking in this is really good at taking a problem and trying to move it forward. So often I find when I'm working with owners, they'll, you know, if I talk to them, for example, around cash flow and say, let's do, you know, we need a cash flow spreadsheet to know where your cash flow is at. They'll go, yeah, sure. I'll go away and I'll spend, you know, several hours pulling that together. And I'll say, well, why don't we just do it in the next 30 minutes instead? So being able to really chunk down tasks to get good outcomes really quick, I think is part of the thinking around that. But it's also part of the thinking of how do you get, you know, minimum viable product thinking in the place of your business, get much more lean, get much more thinking about short time frames and how you can deliver a lot more there. These other two books, Doing Agile Right and Agile Sales, I've actually not read, but they're on my list. I'm not sure if any of you have actually come across those. But I do think that this thinking is really critical for you know, looking at the way that we do business, and here's why. You know, we get faster customer feedback, which is what we were talking about earlier, Shaka, which is important. Faster results, again, that's what we were talking about earlier, Mark, when we were talking about how you get through that business process further. Fewer resources, less cost. You know, Greg, that was something that's an issue that you're contemplating going forward. And for all of us, reducing risk is really, really critical. Darren, I know you're there. I'm not sure if you can hear us, but if you can and you can come off mute, please feel free to jump into the conversation. I'm assuming that you're somewhere where you can't actually see or can't actually communicate with us. You might be in the car or something, but anyway, if you're not, feel free to jump in. But I think also, you know, like you were saying, Greg, yeah, how ready is WA for COVID? Now, I think we've actually coped pretty well when we've had to lock down and all the rest of it. We've been really lucky that we haven't had to do what Melbourne and Sydney have done. And the question is, what's going to happen? You know, if we get to the point where we start seeing numbers where we have tens, 20s, hundreds of infections, you know, getting north of 1,000 like we've seen in other states, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Nobody wants to go back to masks. We certainly don't want to do that in 40-degree days. So we'll see. But I think also the key issue, that last point there, everybody's time poor at the moment. I think it's a critical factor that everybody's dealing with. I don't find anybody going, you know what, I really wish I had more to do. You know, so what's Agile all about? It's about this idea of much more quickly iterating to something. So when I'm talking to, I had a number of calls this week and last week with some startup founders, and it's not just applicable for startups, it's applicable for any business trying to do anything that's innovative. It's how do you put something in front of a customer faster? How do you validate what you're doing much more quickly in terms of your speed to market there? It's a really critical thing to be thinking about, that iterative process. Now, you can apply it to project management. It's always used in software development, but I think that where it really makes sense is in the innovation space, because it allows you to get that customer feedback much more quickly. There was an example I'll just talk about that I experienced. I was sitting next to, when I was building one of the startups I worked on some time ago, a product called Present. When we were working on that, the people that were sitting next to us were building a new startup which was around trying to be an alternative to Seek. And what they said to me was, if there was a product like Seek which was cheaper and gave part of your fee to a charity of your choice, you'd use it, right? That was the way they did market research. So that's fundamentally just leading the witness. So they spent 12 months building the product without really testing it with customers. They spent 8 weeks in the market and shut it. Right? So that's, you know, not what you want to be, not what you want to be doing. Darren said he's driving and listening intently and nodding his head. So just keep doing that and keep driving safely. Darren will make sure there's a video of this for you afterwards so that you don't have to stare at the phone instead of driving properly. So for those that have been around in the tech scene, and Greg and I go back, yeah, what, over 20 years now, and having worked. I think we met in about March or April 2000.
I can go one better.
Yeah.
I was at the launch of the blockchain R&D lab out at Curtin on Monday.
Oh yeah.
And the Pro Vice Chancellor who opened it looked at me and he said, I can still remember Greg doing a seminar to the business school in 1994 showing the strange new technologies called Netscape and the World Wide Web and suggesting we might be able to use it in education.
Wow.
So I realise I am an old timer now.
Well, the grey's giving it away. I cut all my hair off so I don't get as much grey in it. That's my theory. So we don't really need to go much into waterfall, but the idea of traditionally in terms of software development is you'd spend a bunch of time defining what you were going to do. You'd then design it, then you'd develop it, then you would test it and deploy it. And I used to run a software development business, and this is exactly what we did. But we were actually really successful. And the reason why is we kept the project timeframes relatively short, which kept everybody on the same page. And we showed people what we're doing along the way. So effectively what we were doing is some agile components in that waterfall method. So there's arguments for both sides in terms of process, but the idea of being able to do something and get it in front of a customer quickly for feedback is really the key thing that you need to be thinking about. So, in terms of the types of processes, you think about small project cycles, quick lead times, ongoing daily communication, and chunking ideas down into, I like this phrase, minimal viable actions, which chunks down those things that you keep the momentum going forward, and then using the right technology to support what you're doing there. So I think this is a critical thing that I see over time. You do not want to let perfect be the enemy of good. And particularly when you're dealing with engineering folk or technical folk, what I find is that they really want to deliver a beautiful product, and they can spend an awful lot of time over engineering it to shine it to the point of perfection before they put it in front of a customer. And then devastated if the customer doesn't like it. So, you know, close enough is good enough. Let's not go too far with that. So what's a minimum viable product? It's really thinking about all of the parts all the way through. So how does somebody use? How does somebody engage? What is their experience in terms of using that, and making sure that it comes through together end to end really, really well. Won't jump too much into this, because I think that there's plenty to read, and you get a bit of a sense of where I'm coming from with all of this. But it is really trying to work out much more quickly. I mean, Mark, you were talking about keeping the timesheet with a pen and bit of paper. You know, that rough sketching kind of approach when you're running that in workshops and with teams can work really, really well. So what I'd like you to think about is, you know, in terms of key actions for the next 90 days, where is it that you can look at some areas where you can apply more agility, you know, thinking about lean principles and agile principles, but also getting back to that key question of 80-20, you know, when we're talking about the Pareto principle at the start. Where is it that your time is going? What is it that are those areas where perhaps you might be able to take this thinking and find some more capacity and capability? So let's have a quick chat around that now, in terms of where you see big chunks of time being chewed up in terms of what you're doing. Greg, I'll get you to start.
Key actions for the next 90 days.
Where do you think that you could find, like if I said to you, I want you, my minimum viable project for you over the next 90 days is I want you to find 20% of capacity. I want you to think about where you're using your time and how you might find a day a week more than what you're doing now. What would it be that you would look to start hacking back?
I think in my particular instance, it's going to be acquiring the resources that I can delegate much of what I'm doing now, because it's a 7-day week at the moment, and that's not sustainable.
No, so, definitely not.
Assuming once we get a CEO in place, then I would probably be spending more time reflecting and being able to plan more effectively the use of my time, and to be louder in saying no. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you did not much more than being louder than saying no and delegating effectively for the next 90 days, that would be a really, really good outcome. I'm just working with a new business at the moment who have grown at a phenomenal clip. And so what they're now doing is they're now going back, and we're going through and pulling together a workforce plan. We're pulling together job roles. We're defining those for different people in the team. And we're starting to see the exciting possibility of how they're now going to be able to get 30% more activity out of the team, just because they're starting to pull those structures in place. And they're actually now going to be able to see coming ahead the next 6-12 months, who are the new people that need to go and put into the business and when. It's just going to allow them to have more time to react. It gives them, one way of describing it is you need enough time to be able to get the blunderbuss up so you can shoot the elephant, right? So that's an expression that you'll understand, Greg, but some people would be horrified at me using such an expression. Anyway, okay, Mark, let's jump to you now. Next 90 days, if I was trying to get you the same question that I just posed to Greg, I've got to find a day a week more productivity. Where are you going to find it? What could you do? I'll just get you to unmute if you don't mind. Yeah, thanks.
So one of the things that I've done is been in discussion with a guy with regards to business development for my business.
Yes,
so
right.
Instead of me going out and doing that, I'm going to get somebody to outsource that.
Right, okay.
So not only will that provide growth, but it'll also free up time to concentrate on other things that, you know, I need to do. So
yeah, fantastic. That sounds exciting.
Definitely.
So how are you going to track and measure its success and work out if that's working in the first 4 weeks of engagement?
I suppose it'll depend on the volume of work that comes in from that business development. So we'll talk about sort of key targets that we want to do and achieve, and then figure out after the first few months if that's working, and if not, either revise the plan or scrap the plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. You might find that getting along for a number of those meetings first up will be really helpful in terms of guiding that person to speak in the way that you want to speak, talk about your business in the way that you want to talk about it, and so on, so that you get the right kinds of things coming through. But that sounds like an exciting opportunity, Mark. I wish you well with that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Shaka, what about you?
Well, I spend a big chunk of my time driving around, doing actual physical work. So that's something I'm hoping when we grow enough to kind of replace myself.
Yeah.
That will be eventually unsustainable if you have enough collections, but also it needs to be kind of financially viable. So that's something I need to figure out yet.
Yeah.
I also spend a lot of time on social media and free marketing, which is pretty much helping us a lot, but I'm also looking into putting some real sales strategies and actually paying some money for advertising for one of the other businesses we have.
Right.
So I don't have to spend that much time on that. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, just streamlining and figuring out what is bringing the most money and moving towards that rather than,
cool.
doing the social work and, volunteering.
Yeah, that sounds good. This sheet, I won't go through in any detail, but it talks through, this is one of the sessions that we had earlier in the year around the Growth Hub, talking about the 5 phases of being a high-performing leader in your business. If you want that, just email us and we'll get a copy of that through to you. The thing that's neat about this, it allows you to see your own personal development along that journey to being a visionary leader. And it doesn't matter if you're a one-person business or if you are a much bigger company or looking to build a bigger company. It's good to understand where you're sitting along this journey upon each of those, what your business acumen is, attitude to continuous improvement, and so on. So it's a really good tool. So quick summary from today. I think 2022 is going to be an exciting year. 2021, I think, has been an exciting year in itself. It's had a few challenges in it. I think 2022 will also be an exciting year, depending what happens with Omicron and whatever new transformer name that they give to the next variant after that. Who knows? Greg, I mentioned to Mark and to Shaka, we can give you access to a free version of Mindshot, which is a subset of the full system, which has got a problem-solving course in there and 10 problem-solving tools. If you're interested in that, just email us and we'll get you set up. Do think about what those practical agile principles that you can embrace. I really heartily recommend that Scrum book. You can apply it in lots of different ways. After I finished reading it, I actually applied it to my very next game of golf. And every shot I was taking, I was thinking, how can I incrementally improve what I just did by a few percent? And there were some shots that needed more than a few percent improvement, I can tell you. But it did make me think much more about how for that continual improvement in terms of golf as it apply, and then how does that apply to business and everything you do. If you start down that path, you just start looking for those opportunities, and journaling, reflection, yoga, whatever your meditation method is, whatever way you tap into that, do make sure you think about that. Also, do think about our face-to-face growth hub. So we'll make sure that you're getting emailed around that for coming up for the new year. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a glass of water. So we'll have a really exciting agenda coming forward into the new year. And if you're interested in that, do let us know. For those people that are part of our ongoing business coaching programs, they get to attend these for free. If you're not part of our ongoing business coaching program, we're happy to let you to come along to one and see if that's something you'd like to be a part of. So I'd just like to get from you quickly, if there's an idea or something useful you can take away from this session. What is what is sort of the single most useful thing that's come out of this 30 minutes that we've just had together? Greg?
Because I came late, and I do apologize for that, the thing that's stuck in my mind was the point you made about Agile.
Yeah.
With our pilot program, it's a 3-month pilot, but it's actually 4 4-week sprints.
Yeah, right.
So chunk it down, put it, whatever your opportunity or challenge is, break it down into manageable chunks and treat each one as a 1 or more sprints.
Yeah, that sounds really good. That's great. Mark, what about you?
I think pretty much like Greg is saying, the agility, but also those most viable actions, and when you kind of faced with the problem, you always look at that big picture and think, oh my God, how am I going to do that? And there's a classic African proverb, how do you eat an elephant? And it's 1 bite at a time. So it's basically doing that, is sort of looking at the problem, not from an overall, but how can you break it down into bite size or eat, digestible chunks.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to knock an elephant over, you just twist the tail, right? That's how it's. I'm not sure if that's an African proverb or not, but I do think you're right. Just kind of finding that. That's why I love the Pomodoro technique. If you haven't come across that, I really recommend that. That's a tomato timer. So you do something for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break. And the thing about the 5-minute break, I always thought that was a bit of a bludge when I first looked at it. But what I actually found is that it gives the subconscious mind space to get much more out of the 25 minutes that you just spent. So it's, I've become convinced that it's genius over the time that I've been applying it. What about you, Shaka? What was useful for you out of this session?
I think, as Greg and Mark already mentioned, the planning as well in a probably shorter time frame for each of the opportunities, because I have so many projects on go, and I tend to look at like where I want to get like in 5 years and whatnot. But looking at the current things happening and just also planning for them, and then keeping myself accountable, looking at them in like months and 3 months time and seeing whether that happened or whether it's going somewhere else, which quite often happens.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well that sounds good. So if you are able to give us a little bit of feedback, that's good. You can point your phone at that, if I don't push it forward, at that QR code. I'm just going to do it really quickly so you don't get much of a chance to scan it. But if you could scan that, give us a little bit of quick feedback, that'd be really cool. I'll just wait for a second for you to just Greg's got that done. Mark, if you can, Shaka, and then I'll jump onto the next slides. All good. Great, thank you. If you haven't already got my contact details, they're there. Thank you very much for taking some time out on a Friday as we're getting close into the end of the year. I don't know about you, but it doesn't feel like it's slowing down. I know that people are starting to talk about Christmas and they're putting up lights and talking about doing trees and all of those kinds of things. For those that that's aligned to their religion and the way they think. But for me, it still seems to be really busy, and I haven't had anybody even say I need to get this done by Christmas yet. They're just still going flat out doing the doing. So I think that's interesting. Be interesting to see how the end of the year shapes up and how we're going to look into 2022. I'm really excited about what 2022 will bring. I hope for all of you that it's a year that you get to this time next year and you think 2022 is an absolute cracker. So many fantastic things have happened, and it's been an exciting year. So with that, I'll wish you the very best for the end of the year. If you've got any final comments or thoughts you want to share, now's the time. Otherwise, I'll close, or you've got any questions. Otherwise, I'll close the session and wish you well.